Joining me in the studio today is Dr. Piet Croukamp. He's a political analyst in South Africa. Piet, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
South Africa is just staying in the headlines after that disastrous meeting between Ramaphosa and President Donald Trump in the White House. So the issue that seems to be lasting is not the white genocide issue. That seems to be have been put aside a little bit. But the one that is really sticking is this chant, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer," by Julius Malema, that people were continually asking, why is South Africa not doing anything about it?
Yeah, you'll remember in the White House, Donald Trump said to Ramaphosa, "Why don't you arrest him?" And we're a sovereign jurisdiction, and the rule of law applies. Yet the president, hopefully, will never ever be allowed to arrest anybody in South Africa. You have the police and the Hawks and the NPA to do that, to fulfill those type of functions. And we have a judgment, a court judgment, which says that this is part of the liberationist struggle. It's a liberationist song, and it is not in any way beyond the definition of freedom of speech. Look, it's unfortunate, but that's how it is, and we now have to live within that frame of reference that the court has decided for us. So I think there's another argument here, and you will, if you listen to President Ramaphosa, he will say it is not policy, or he will say, well, it's just a liberation song. It's not meant literally. But Gwede Mantashe, the chairperson of the ANC, has said that we don't sing that anymore. And even Fikile Mbalula, the Secretary General, said it's not appropriate for the times that we live in. That sounds like creating some distance between the past and the present. So you have to ask yourself the question, why can't the president do that? Why does he refuse to say something which distance him, at least, from Julius Malema in some other way? And my argument is that it is quite possible for the president to say, it's part of our liberation struggle, but we prefer not to uh, participate in any act which could be construed by any vulnerable group in South Africa as a call for war or for genocide. So I would distance myself on those grounds. That doesn't mean I do not recognize the liberationist origins of the song. And it doesn't mean I say it's illegal. But I do think that as a leader, I have the responsibility, the moral responsibility, to provide guidance. And I've raised this issue to people close to the president. I've said to them, why don't you just consider this? Because it creates not only a lot of stress in South Africa, but it also provides right-wing groupings with a lot of fodder to go after government, to go after the government of national unity, to go after people of reason, because it seems like if you find some sort of justification for the fact that the song is being sung and that the president did not express him very explicitly against it, that it sounds like you're complicit almost, and that's unfortunate.
So do you think he should come out with some grand statement about this?
I wouldn't say grand statement. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to reject the history of the song. When Donald Trump asked him about the song, all he should have said, don't say it's not policy. It's meaningless to say that. Say, we do not want the song to be sung. We accept that we cannot overrule the law. We cannot come to a different conclusion from the judges. But we as a political party, like my chairperson has said, like my secretary general has said, we think it's inappropriate for the times that we live in. He doesn't ask a lot of you. And I can tell you now, the vast majority of Black South Africans, will not take exception to that. The people who will take exception are those who are the opponents of Ramaphosa within the government of national unity. Paul Mashatile might take exception. Now there's even Gwede Mantashe, but because he's jumped the ship, he's now on the side of Paul Mashatile. So that faction, in defense of their own political power struggles, might take exception and also express it and create some divisions within the ANC. And that is what Ramaphosa fears. He fears what can happen within the ANC. And then, look, he doesn't want to stand for office again. He can't be re-elected as the president again. But he fears one thing. There's one thing that goes to him every night when he goes to bed. And that is, he doesn't want Gwede Mantashe Secretary General Fikile Mbalula and Paul Mashatile to knock on his door in the way that Gwede Mantashe knocked on the door of Thabo Mbeki and Jacob Zuma and say, "We recall you." He fears that he wants to serve his term and walk away with some sort of a legacy. He fears that not a single ANC president has survived a second term without being removed. That's the biggest fear that he has. That's why he deny or refuse to take the necessary steps, to take leadership, which he doesn't do.
Could this come? Could this knock on the door? I mean, do you think that that's what they're planning?
It depends on what he does. It depends on what he does. Look at the faction, the Paul Mashatile faction has already asked Fikile Mbalula, why don't you set down a date for the next National Executive Committee meeting? And Fikile Mbalula keep on postponing it. And what he fears, what Fikile Mbalula fears and Ramaphosa fears is that in that meeting, it is quite possible for the NEC to decide to suspend the government of national unity. And Ramaphosa fears that because he knows that he's lost the support for the government of national unity in the caucus. And most of the members of the National Executive Committee comes from the caucus of the ANC. His saving grace might be that many of these members in the National Executive Committee also sits in his cabinet. And it might be that they won't necessarily in that meeting vote against their president for fear of losing their jobs if they don't win the day. But it's there's a power balance in South Africa between a complete collapse of the government of national unity and the narrow survival of the voice of reason, which is the government of national unity. And Fikile Mbalula fears that, Ramaphosa fears that, Paul Mashatile thinks he can topple the government of national unity because that's what he wants. And there are, and Gwede Mantashe too. They're all on that side. There's a lot of very strong voices on the side that reject the idea of government of national unity.
Now, let's get back to that meeting with Trump. Now, when you look at what has been happening in South Africa since, there's kind of a fierce debate. Ramaphosa came back and said he was quite pleased with the meeting, which is quite surprising. So has anything happened? Has anything shifted? Has anything moved apart from this one regulation or whatever by Malatsi?
Look, the reason why Ramaphosa says he's pleased with the meeting, what else can he say? If he says it was a horrible meeting, then he admits to being humiliated, which he to some degree was. He was humiliated. I think they set in a trap for him. They had the TV in advance brought in. They knew what they're going to do. So I think to a degree he was humiliated. And the argument is always, and John Steenhuisen says the same, that after the meeting, while they had a dinner or a supper or lunch, they had a lunch, they talked real business there. And I don't think they came to any firm agreements, but they set the platform for future talks. And the tone was that let's do business. Let's put this politics behind us. Let's do business. Let's talk about tariffs in the past. Let's talk about investment. So that was the tone when they came back to South Africa. John Steenhuisen said so, and I think it was the general notion or understanding of what has happened there. Since then, it's almost as if Ramaphosa has regressed a little bit. First, he started to make fun about how he was set up in the White House. Then he started to make the point that black economic empowerment is not negotiable. That was exactly the point on the other side, that we don't want to subject ourselves to that 30% ruling of black economic empowerment. There he sounded like as if he's pragmatic about it. Now he's not pragmatic about it. And it could be because of pressure that he experienced within the ANC here. Because Malachi's regulations that he wishes to change for the ITC sector was presented at Parliament, and it was a brutal fight. It was a brutal fight. There was pushback from the ANC. Remember, he's a DA minister. There was pushback from the ANC. And what can Ramaphosa do other but joining the views of the ANC in Parliament, in the caucus, because that's that very same caucus that sits in the NEC, where he can be removed, the government of national unity can be removed. That's enormously powerful. So it sounds to me like he has regressed with just exactly where we've been. If it goes on like this, we could, in a month or two, say, What was all that about? What has it changed? But we will have to see somewhere in July. The Trump administration will decide about tariffs. We will see how they deal with South Africa then. But from now till that date, we must be very careful what South African politicians are saying, because the Trump administration will pick up on that. And it could determine, just remember, Trump makes policy on Twitter, on X. He can, with one morning, he can get up and he can destroy all agreements that was ever reached between him and whoever and whatever jurisdiction. We just have to say one wrong thing to offend him. And he can say 35% tariff. Then all these motor assembly plants and vehicle manufacturers in South Africa, which is embedded in our manufacturing industry, they might have to leave because at 35% tariff, it's not worth it to operate from South Africa. And Trump wants them to come back.
So South Africa is in a precarious position, and 9 July is around the corner.
Very difficult position, and we don't make it easy for ourselves. But I think it is partially to do with the ideological disposition within the ANC. But I've seen many big parties and big movements and interest groups changing the disposition inherent to them because of good leadership. It's quite possible for somebody to stand up and say, I'm the leader here, I take the lead, we're going to take the unpopular and the difficult decisions today. I will take responsibility for that. Who of you are with me and who are against me? And quite often, if you provide strong leadership, you can take a lot of people with you. You can take people with you that might have agreed with you generally, or some who don't have an opinion, but you can move the ship forward. Ramaphosa has got no leadership skills. He's got no ability, no political will to make the very difficult decisions. He keep on postponing them, rephrasing them, leaving to some other institution, create a little committee to discuss the particular thing and never come to a conclusion. He's the master of postponing all the difficult decisions. And the reason why we have 0.6% economic growth, why we have 40% unemployment in South Africa, is because we don't make the difficult decisions. Because that's what it takes.
And you don't expect any difficult decisions to be made by the deadline.
If I listen to what the president has said over the last 2 days, he's back in the mold in which he was before he left here. Postponing, not making the difficult decisions, not making the hard calls, not saying the little things that will make a big difference. Like, for instance, saying, we don't sing that song. It creates a massive distraction. It creates massive fear. It's being used against us unfairly. It destroys, it impacts on the value of the liberation movement. Look what our political past has been associated with now because of it's clear and simple things to decide, these little things that can make a massive difference. He doesn't have the touch and that feeling for the little things can make the big differences.
Sure, that doesn't bode well for us. And if you looked at somebody like Joel Pollock, whether you agree with his politics or not, that seems to be the Trump perception, that nothing's going to happen even after that meeting.
Yeah, the thing about Joel Pollock is that I disagree with almost everything he says, but he's a very intelligent person, and it's very difficult to counter his arguments. And the thing is that the ANC give him all the arguments that he needs to undermine us. They provide it on a platter to him. This song that's being sung and the president that refused to distance him from that, it's like giving Joel Pollock and anybody who wishes to criticize us, including Donald Trump, it's providing him with a good argument on a platter. So yes, and he's influential, but there are other South Africans also influential. I just hope that that people like Ernie Els and Johan Rupert and that their voices prevail, and that the president of America have it in the back of his mind that I have these friends and I want to be. I want to I want to understand what they say, and I want to be on their side in this massive battle for South Africa. At least if I join them against the ANC, if I give preference to what they asked me, then I also act against the ANC. I don't know what I'm confused about where this thing will end up. But all I think, there's so many contradictions, so many easy solutions that are being ignored, so many difficult decisions that are not being made. We don't know where it's going to. Look, we're not the only ones. The Chinese don't know where they're going to with Trump. The Vietnamese don't know. The British don't know. The European Union don't know. Nobody knows. But all I know is that you have to step very, very carefully. Don't make the simple mistakes with the massive consequences. If you walk into a bar and don't pick a fight with a guy with a glass in hand, with a knife in hand, with a gun in hand, or the biggest one in the bar. Be careful, be careful. It doesn't mean you're some psychophant who gives your political will over to some bigger power. It just means you ride the wave at times when it's more important that the outcomes are suitable to your own survival.
Dr. Piet Croukamp, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.